Okay, here's my video. It's a disaster area right now, but I've been working on fixing up the truck camper. I figured out that this F250 7.3 turbo diesel only had a stock suspension, no fancy tow packages or anything. So the first thing I had to do was, well, I didn't have to, but I thought it might help, is to install this Hellwig sway bar in the rear. I had a lot of sway coming up the mountain here, taking it home for the first time. It's kind of like riding a big boat down the road, and a little bit scary. So my first attempt was to install that. Didn't really fix any of the sway as far as I can tell without driving it. But for now, this is my latest project. It's an airlift. I guess it says G513 on there. That's a lift kit, airlift assist for the leaf springs. Which, as you can see, maybe even in the video, I can sit there and rock this thing. You'll probably see more of the video rocking than anything, but I can sit here and rock it. Here, let me see if this works. It's actually stiffened up quite a bit already, I guess, with the what I've gotten finished so far. But before, you could really see these leaf springs shaking back and forth just by rocking the truck bed by hand. So this was my method. Yeah, there's a few learning curves. Like one first recommendation, if you've never drilled into a thick frame like this before, truck frame. I got these it's from Home Depot, rigid drill bits, and they claim to be cobalt, but I don't think they're actually. They might be coated or something, but they're probably not the real cobalt element, but they're much better than the other bits I tried using. And of course, it takes a 3/8 to drill these holes for these bolts to hold on this bracket. This is the top section. This is the bottom section. And if you're wondering what I'm doing here, this is these are my spacers. So what they tell you in the instructions, if you can find instructions, they didn't come with the package I got because it was kind of like a Amazon special type thing. But what they tell you is, as much as you can, to align this top bracket with your parallel as much as possible with the frame. But what's more important is to keep both sides of the airlift airbag equal distance. So from this top to this bottom, from this top to this bottom, should be as much as possible equal distance, so that you don't have any weird torquing when you start to fill up the airbags, that they fill up evenly, the top and the bottom plates. So they recommended me using some kind of a spacer, and what I came up with was what is this, a 1x7, I think it is? It's supposed to be an 8, but I don't think it's quite that much. Let me see. Measure this out real quick. I forgot what I think it was about 7.5, which I came to. And I believe they tell you to keep it within a 5 to 8 inch range. And yeah, as you can see, this is just over 7.5 inches. The reason I made it a little taller with this little bit of a piece of flooring that I nailed on. I made it a little bit longer because they said to get as high up on the frame as possible. As you can see, even from there, I'm still pretty low, even 7.5 inches. And you can see that it's a little bit slanted from the rest of the frame, but like I said, you get advice from a lot of different sources, and one source was a hitch and welding shop that I stopped in and actually talked to one of the techs in person, and he said it's not that big of a deal if it's a little bit crooked, as long as this section, like I say, is equal on both sides. For some reason, I think the way the leaf spring sits, that's just kind of how it is, because I haven't put these spacers on here, 1-inch spacers, both sides. And again, that's as high as it got on my F250 frame. Oh yeah, and the one thing, they didn't include they included only half the bolts. So I had to pick up a couple bolts from the hardware store, 3/8 inch, and a couple of these washers and lock washers on the inside of the frame. And actually this side of the, this side of the bracket actually didn't even have any holes drilled. So I had to drill through the bracket first and then into the frame. Which, like I said, with my first set of bits, I probably sat there for an hour, hour and a half without being able to get through the bracket, let alone into the truck frame. So that's about how much I've gotten done so far. I've gotten these bolts tightened up. They're at, I think they called for 40-something foot-pound spec, but I did 50 on each of these. And like I said, I'm about ready to, I gotta pull my spacers out. I gotta tighten up all these bolts. I gotta tighten up a couple bolts on the top here, holding this bracket on. A couple on the bottom, holding this on. Then I'll tighten up the little U bolts onto the leaf springs. And then I'll get back to you, I guess.